Welcome to Creatives Grab Coffee, the podcast on the business of video production.
Creatives Grab Coffee is hosted by Dario Nuri and Kirill Lazarov from Labs Productions. Our goal is to share knowledge and experiences from video production professionals around the world. Whether you're a freelancer looking to start your own business or a seasoned business owner aiming to scale your company, this is the show for you.
Join us as we develop a community of like-minded creatives looking to learn and help each other grow. Welcome to the business of video production. Welcome to Creatives Grab Coffee.
Before we get started with the show, let's go over today's sponsors.
Do you have a shoot in Toronto? Do you need crew or a strong production partner to help you with your project? Labs Productions is one of the top production companies in Toronto and your go-to video partner.
With our strong creative skills and extensive network, we can help you achieve your goal. Labs Productions is able to offer you production services, white label services, or finder fees for project handoffs.
Reach out to us on our website at lapsproductions.com to learn more.
My name is Miran. Welcome to Canada Film Equipment. We are a boutique rental house based in Toronto. We are here to help you guys out with all production sizes. Feel free to contact us to get a quote if you are a production house and you're looking for lighting, camera packages, or lighting and grid fan packages. You can see our contact information in the link below. We are more than happy to help you guys out. Make sure you follow and subscribe to creativesgrabcoffee.com. Thank you.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Matt. Welcome to Audio Process. We are a boutique audio company doing location sound, sound design, post-sound, ADR, Foley. We service equipment. We do all your audio needs here in Toronto. We got you covered. Come on down, audioprocess.ca. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and all of the other internet things to creativesgrabcoffee.com. They'll be waiting for you. I'll be waiting for you, and we're all going to have a real good time.
And now, let's begin the show.
Starting on a high. Okay, hi everyone. Today we got Guy Bauer from Umault. Guy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We were just talking before we started recording about the names. I thought for years it was Umault, but apparently I found out just like a minute ago it's Umault.
Umault, yeah. It's the umlaut is that U with the two dots that makes the oo sound. But yeah, it's. When I was changing the name, I actually had a consultant, David C. Baker, who was guiding me through this whole like rebrand that I was doing. And I said, "Hey, I like the what do you think of Umault?" He's like, "It's a terrible name. It's hard to spell, impossible to pronounce." And I didn't listen. And yeah, it is a ridiculous name. Like people think we're umlaut, right? Like because it's Umault. It's a play. It's just the worst name. It's just the worst name.
How did you even come across? Like, how did you come up with that? What is it?
I didn't actually come up with it. We used a design agency, and I said, "Hey, be weird. Here's what I want, like our whole vibe to be," and they came up with it. And so, my philosophy on brand names is that you fill the brand name with meaning. You know, the name actually doesn't really mean much without you filling it with meaning.
Yeah.
Right.
But basically, it's a play on umlaut. The umlaut is the U with the two dots. So we're Umault, and it's kind of just like, hey, you look at something, and we're just kind of twisting reality a little bit. I don't know. That's like the post-rationalization of a crazy name. You know what I mean? You got to come up with...
Oh, my God. I have like a funny story about that.
That's exactly like how we did it with our name, because we came up with our name being something really... It just sounded cool, and it was the only thing that sounded different back in 2014. We wanted to get just Laps, laps.com, but that was taken, so we had to add productions to it. And
but even how we came up with Labs, it was from a short film I was working on called Relapse, and I was like, "Oh, it would sound cool. It's just Lapse," and I didn't even know.
Just called Lapse. It wasn't Relapse. It was just Lapse.
What was that? I don't remember.
It was just Lapse.
Was it just Lapse? I think it went through a couple of name changes. And then if you think about the name, for the longest time, people are asking us about it. We'd have to fill it in, like,
Right.
okay, what those laps mean, like a lapse in memory. We're like, oh, okay, so like the videos are so good that like you don't notice the time that passes. It's like we're just trying to fill it
exactly.
And then, but that was like our like on the spot like elevator pitch. But eventually,
Which
couple
was
years
not
back.
bad.
A couple of years back, we finally came up with a better one. Actually, I came up with it after Kirill's New Year's Eve party. I'm lying down in bed, like drunk, and I just had it come to me. I was like, LAPSE. I'm like, we should do something with the letters. So, lasting, amazing. Pictures, sounds, and experiences. I'm like, this is so good. I was like, I'll tell Kirill tomorrow morning about this, right? And I'm like, I'm about to go to sleep. I'm like, wait. I'm gonna forget. I have like the memory of a goldfish. I'm like, let me write it down. That's our modern one.
And that's what creativity really is. I mean, it's coming up with a crazy idea and then having to like post rationalize it. That's like what we do. That's what we do.
Yeah, working within certain boundaries or creative boundaries as well. It's like, all right, we're kind of stuck with this name. What can we do to make it really good? Because we all know rebranding is a whole pain in the ass. Like, I mean, luckily we're all very small businesses, so it's not as hard as like say a bigger company is. But just even the process of like, say you had to just like, because I've always wanted to even like tweak the logo just a little bit, even just a little tweak. Then you have to update it on every single social. You have to get it in the right format size. You have to export it in certain settings for certain websites, and it's just absolutely crazy to do that. Not to mention the videos, all the promo videos.
We were thinking of changing the name a while back, but then we were trying to come up with different names, and we're like, these all stink, and not to mention the URLs aren't available either.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the other reason why the agency liked Umault, was that it was available, because it's just a cockamamie name. But, you know, like it's a 6-letter word that was available. .com, you know. When does that ever happen?
Anytime a company is like trying to say like, oh yeah, this is our name, we chose it because of this. And it's like, we all know that you spent hours on GoDaddy.com testing to see if that URL was available or not. And that's the only one that was left over. And day by day, it gets even harder. It gets even harder because more and more people are taking URLs here and there, and yeah.
Totally.
But anyways, let's get into a little bit more about like the company behind the name. So tell us a little bit about Umault.
Yeah, so Umault's been around since summer 2019, and it came after essentially the downfall of my previous production company called Guy Bauer Productions, which is a little like, what's the word? Where actually I'll never forget this moment. I had a huge sign in lights for our office and it said Guy Bauer Productions, or it said with our logo on it, right? And we were leaving the office. I had to get rid of it to shed expenses, and I was going to the dumpster to throw stuff away, and I saw the sign, like my name though, in the dumpster.
Oh my god!
And it was just, it was so humiliating. I can't describe it, but it was all self-inflicted. So Umault came out of the ashes of Guy Bauer Productions. I started Guy Bauer Productions in 2010. I had always been into radio, TV, film, just kind of an AV guy. I've been making videos since the 7th grade. Got into a couple TV shows in the early 2000s, and then moved on to producing a morning radio show. But video was always my hobby. It's what I did with my friends. We made goofy music videos and just stuff to be funny and stupid. And I lost my job in the Great Recession of 2009. Sent out like 100 resumes. I didn't even get to do an interview. I didn't even go on one interview. It was really bad. And in January 2010, I was at Barnes & Noble, and there was like a money magazine, and the headline was How to Make Money in 2010. I was like, yes, all right, I need that.
I remember those articles.
Yeah, right. And there was this little thing about if you have a hobby, you can go on these freelance websites. Back then it was called guru.com and elance.com. Elance.com turned into Upwork. And you can go get little freelance things. So I made a profile, and my first gig was a $50 puppy video edit back in 2010. And edited this guy's puppy videos, and he wrote like a 5-star review, and then I used that to go get a $70 job and an $80 job. And my whole intent was just to supplement unemployment while I looked for a job. But then eventually it just kind of snowballed, and there it went. And I was on my entrepreneurial journey and proceeded to just make every dumb mistake I could, unintentionally, but just business-wise, creative-wise, client management-wise, just have stumbled through the last 14 years. Anyway, so that kind of culminated in 2018, where I had 32 full-timers and was just on a downward spiral of taking on unprofitable work to meet my salary demands, and then needing more people to do the unprofitable work. And it was just like this rock and a hard place, because I couldn't, it was all unprofitable work. It was all like terrible, terrible work. My workforce was totally demoralized because the work we were doing was just complete stink stuff, just totally, like the clients were terrible. And then I was a nervous wreck. I had 32 people. I had a payroll that I can't even believe the payroll we had. And so I'm freaking out. And so, I was a terrible manager. And, and that kind of just all crashed in 2018, required to do 2 rounds of layoffs and basically dismantle what I had built, and eventually just come to the realization. I went to a Panera, and spent a day there, and I was like, all right, dude, you got to just figure this out today. And just took a booth and tried to kind of square this whole thing of like, well, I know that, like, I'm good at video. I know that. I stink at business, but I'm good at video. And I just tried to like put this whole thing together, and we brought in a consultant named David C. Baker.
Is he the guy from Two Bobs?
That's what I was going to ask. Wow.
So that was the best money I've ever spent, ever, actually, because he essentially saved my, like, not life, but like saved my business or my like line of work that I do. And that was Umault. Umault was like, all right, I'm done letting clients drive, because when clients drive, you end up making corporate videos because they don't know creative. It's not because they're evil or mean or anything. They just don't know what they're doing. So the old self would let clients drive, and the new agency is no. Like, you don't go up to the cockpit when the plane's landing and go like, can you go to the left a little bit more? Like, you don't. Yeah. They don't get to do that. Passengers do not get to do that. And my resolution was like, no. I'm the pilot. You sit in the back, and I'll get you where you want to go, but you have to sit in the back. And that's kind of what Umault is like, just let me drive, please. And that's it.
How can you say you're bad at business, though? Because you went from, like, just starting out to 30-plus employees. Like, that means you must be good at business, you know what I mean? Like,
I think I'm good at selling, and I think I'm awful. Like, if you actually look at the numbers, the amount of money that I lost is kind of mind-blowing, because I think there's sales, and then there's like what you do with the money and how you use it and how you deploy that money. And I think, here's the thing. Am I good at business now? Probably a lot better than I was 14 years ago. So I think one of the reasons why we had such a huge disaster in 2018 was fundamentally because I had no idea what I was doing. Every time we hired a new person, we became a new company that I had never managed before, and I didn't know the dangerous waters I was heading into every time we grew the company. And
what would you say was the danger, like, every time you added another person?
Was it like you didn't know what you were hiring for? Like you were hiring without a plan for the hire necessarily, and how that would impact your business?
Biggest the best way I can say it is this, is, how can I say it? I would be in temporary pain because we would oversell. So I would oversell because I couldn't say no to any opportunity. My internal goal was to, I don't know, be a billionaire or something. I don't even know. Just to be the best, to win video production, just win the game. And so I said, I didn't say no to anything. I just said yes, like for any amount of money as well. And I didn't understand that, well, if you sell a job at X, you can't spend X plus 10 to make it. You have to spend like half X to make it. So I had no financial controls on cost accounting, and I would just let top line thinking take over. I was very top line driven. I was very, if you've ever read the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, he talks about managing your company through the bank account. So I would look in the checking account. If it had a lot of money in it that day, I'd be like, all right, I've won business. I'm great at this. Let's invest something or buy something. And then if it had no money, I would be like, oh, we're going out of business. Oh, really? And I was very public about this, too, in front of team members and just everybody. Like, just a complete disaster of management. And that's what I would say is, like, it was this. And then eventually it got into this thing where I had to feed the beast. Like, I had all these people, and they did nothing wrong. They were great. Like, they're all like doing great things right now. But I just, like, I had to take on whatever work to meet payroll. And then that was completely unprofitable. It required way too much labor, which then required me to sell.
How was it at the
more.
beginning when you
know
were hiring
like,
people? Because again, you ended up with 30, but like, how was it early on when you're adding like your first couple employees?
Yeah, and that's essentially where I made the mistake. There was two paths that I took so I hired my first employee in 2012, and the way I see it is that was a fork in my life. And I took this way, and essentially in 2019, I was like, whoop, that's bad. I like walked all the way back and then took this way. So basically, the bet I made, or the decision I made was, okay, I'll never forget this. I had so much work in 2012 that one day I started crying in the shower. I was just so overloaded. And I was like, all right, I need help. And so, yeah, this fork in the road to the right that I took was, I'm going to hire someone to help me, but keep the prices the same. And that was the major flaw that actually, from 2012 to 2018, set me on that course. And what I did in 2019, essentially, was walk back to that start, and I went to the left, and I said, I'm not going to hire anyone. What I'm going to do is manage capacity through pricing. So instead of keeping the prices the same and just taking away from profit by adding labor and people, I'm going to raise the prices so that the job volume goes down, and essentially just manage my capacity through making it harder to afford.
What was the advice that David C.
Oh, he was like, "You're a month away from bankruptcy. This is I can't." He was like, like shocked at how awful it was, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, like, dude, what are you doing?" And he gave me this kind of 10-step thing, and I still have it, but he was like, "Oh yeah, you have
that
to."
Ship sailed.
I was trying not to lay anyone off, and he was like, "No, that's not going to happen. Like, it's not in the
cards."
Yeah, like, yeah, and so that was it. But then he was like, you have to specialize. You cannot just be a video. Like, Guy Bauer Productions was, we'd make a shoe video next to like a thing about the fourth industrial revolution and digital manufacturing and design, next to a thing about like a new Kickstarter video, next to a music video with
Generalist, right? But most of us are like that, right?
Just do video production.
Jack of all trades, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally generalist. Yeah, and And I can still I think I can still operate in kind of any realm. But his whole thing was, you know, you want to have, and this is where Blair Enns and him see eye to eye, is you want to have the fewest amount of suitable replacements for you. So if it's like we used, our bread and butter back in the day was those conference videos where like an event recap video where you go, you do the time lapse of the room filling up, you put a couple lines of the speaker, then you show people like eating the food with their name tags, and you know, you do cool you try to make it as cool as possible, but it's an event recap video. Well, the thing is I can't demand a high price for an event recap video because everyone else can make an event recap video. So it forces you to compete on price or just wanting it more than everybody. So meaning you're going to overserve, you're going to bring in like a drone and like this and that. And the other thing is that little did I know that all this equipment I had, I thought once you buy equipment, well, now you could just use it for free. It's free. So what does it matter if they're not paying us to use the gear? I already bought it. But the equipment is depreciating. And basically, all of these balance sheet and boring accounting things caught up with me in 2018, where I just couldn't oversell myself out of it. Like I was always relying on like, oh, I could just get more sales and more sales. And what happened eventually companies started in-housing. They started building their own production companies that made crappy corporate videos. They're like, why would we pay you? Let's just build a whole production team that churns out this crap. And and that's what happened. So he was like, you have to specialize. You have to dominate a niche where if the client doesn't want to pay your price, they try to Google, like, you know, replacement for company that can make a funny B2B thing about a complicated topic. And there's not many competitors. And that was his whole thing. And that's where Umault came out of.
From what you're explaining, like, and I see that in the about video that you guys have on your business. It's been a while since I've seen a video production company have a very concise about us video that's 15 seconds that very creatively shows what you guys are all about and how you niche yourselves. And I love that little tidbit where it's like stop doing typical corporate videos like John in the back. John, what are you writing on the board? I have no idea. Yeah. And that just resonated so well. It's like anyone watching this is gonna automatically buy into who you guys are as a business. It's very difficult for video production companies to kind of stand out like that. And this is why a lot of them are also generalists, because, you know, you're in a state where you're constantly fighting for new business. And, you know, if something's coming your way, it's like, here, do you want to do this event recap video for $5,000, right? If nothing's happening in that month, you're not going to say, oh no, I have a niche, I'm not going to do it, right? It's hard for a lot of companies to kind of say no to business like that, right? So like, from what you've learned now doing the generalist approach and then now going into the niche approach, what is like probably some advice you'd give a generalist company in terms of like what they should start doing next or thinking about?
So what's interesting is I feel like sometimes when I'm up at night, I'm like, if I could go back to 2010, would I start with our positioning right now? And
agreed.
Maybe the answer, I think most likely the answer is like, that would be a gigantic mistake. Because you have no idea what you're doing. And it's impossible for you to come up with that positioning anyway. Yeah. So I feel like the generalist to specialist is actually a very natural, organic career path. If you think about it, you know, I started as a PA. A PA, you're a complete generalist. You're like, one day you're in the art department, one day you're with Crafty, the next day you're with talent and the camera team, like next day you're pulling focus. Like they'll use you in whatever way, and it's a great way to figure out what do you like and, you know, where do you want to be. And then cut to that PA 20 years later, I guarantee you they're a department head in whatever department, and they've learned to specialize. So I think going from generalist to specialist is actually, there's no rush. I think it has to happen within you, but I think it's something that you should be aware of. Like, eventually you will need to make the difficult decision, because do you want to be, I'm 42, do I want to be doing event recaps at 42? The answer is no. Like, I don't want to do that. And there's nothing wrong with doing event recaps. If you like it, then, you know, you'll be great at it. And if you keep doing the same thing, you'll truly be a specialist. So there probably is some event recap company where they're like, that's all we do, and no one can touch our creativity. We've seen it all. Like, we know, we can anticipate every little movement and all that stuff. So I forget your question, but I would say, like, there's no rush to specialize. I would just say, just be aware of kind of what you're good at. And that's where I came out as, like, I was like, when I, in that Panera booth, I was like, okay, I think you're really good at funny things for really, like, unfunny industries, or like things that that don't get funny material, you know, that can't have access, don't have limited access to funny stuff. And that's kind of where our positioning came out of. But I could only do that after doing all those hundreds of videos.
Yeah, you really nailed it on the head. And you just said something that I think a lot of video production professionals need to hear, is that there's no rush to have that specialized company. And like Dario and I in the past have even ourselves tried to think about it. It was like, oh, how can we niche down, like, based on what we've done? But then we realized, oh, we haven't done enough of this to really niche down, which is one of the big factors. It's like you have to do enough of that niche before you fully niche down in order to understand it, because you have to understand what you're moving your business into. You can't just say, I'm going to become a product video production company, and even that's my only specialty.
Even if you've done 100,
because you've done one
be
product video, that doesn't mean you know everything. Why is someone going to come to you?
Are you getting enough inquiries to do products where you can just fully just focus on that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering though, it's like, if you haven't niched down, it's hard to get that much of that one type of consistent, how do you say, inflow of leads. Like, maybe once you've done enough, then you can kind of focus on it more and pitch more to those types of clients and leads. Maybe then you'll get more leads. But like you guys said, like, you have to have enough experience in the industry, tried many different things to understand what you want to focus on, if it even makes sense for you. What are you good at, right? And sometimes it's not a matter of also like a specific type of video that you do. It could even be certain industries that you're really good at. Like, you really understand, say, the manufacturing industry. You really understand the finance industry. Like, I know there's like one or two video production companies that are really good with working with nuclear power plant companies. Like, that's a lot of the video content that they do, because different industries need different kinds of videos versus other ones, right? It's like one might need more promotional videos, others might need more social media videos. It really depends.
There's also a difference,
right?
between,
you really just have to go through the motions
doing,
of
like you mentioned, the
getting
nuclear
more
power plant
experience
stuff,
before you can decide that,
and just having that one whale client, and that's why you just do all those types of videos. That's also a distinction.
Yeah. I'm just, I'm making, I'm just using it as an example. But that's the other thing. That's actually a good point you're bringing up. Is like, don't be careful of that pitfall where all your business is one client. That doesn't make that your niche. You know, it's just you have one client that does all that. And there are a lot of companies that build their businesses based on that. And that's how they grow to like a big team. And then if that client leaves, then their team gets decimated. Like, Guy, did you have that kind of with your previous business as well, where you had like a whale client that helped you grow? Or was it like a lot of like medium or smaller companies?
Oh, I'm like, you hit it, man. You hit it. You struck a nerve. Yes, we did have a whale client. Here's the other huge thing, that the other gigantic mistake I made was the whale client every so many months or every year would go, hey, we want a pre-bill. I didn't know what that was. They were, can you send us an invoice for $100,000? And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Sure I can.
Yeah.
I had no idea, but what they were doing is basically like getting budget off their books so they don't lose that budget next year. But what I would do with the $100,000 is I go, well, this is a lot of money, and they're going to have a lot of work for us, so I better hire to anticipate the influx of work. But they would never send us the work.
So it was just like free money? Like they would never...
Just trying to get it off their books, and we were essentially a bank.
Oh, my God.
So...
You got free money and spent it on people. Just that's it.
And to anticipate the work coming in, I'm telling you, this is what I'm saying. Like here's how I describe myself. Like I'm the worst board game player, or like because I think very in the moment. Like,
I need to play poker with you, man. You'll go all in the first hand. This is great.
So I. Yeah.
All in. Yeah, we don't even have our cards yet. I'm all in.
He would be interesting as a poker player, actually. Every time.
Well, I actually play like that. I play blind. A lot of times what I do is I pretend to look at my cards because I'm like, well, if I know the cards, I'm not going to have courage. So I'm not going to look at the cards, and I'm just going to like play people and just bet like I have pocket aces. Anyway, so... Yeah, and so now I know, and maybe you guys know this, I didn't know this, is that pre-bill is not revenue. You have to do the work before you recognize it as revenue. I because where I came from, I went from mom and pop companies to this gigantic whale overnight. And mom and pop companies, when they give you the deposit, you do the work, and then, the cycle is like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever. But then when this whale company came, their cycle is like years. We still have pre-bill on our books all these years later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was a gigantic mistake. I treated that as cash, and I didn't understand that.
How long does a pre-bill last? Like, is it usually like a 1 year term? It keeps going?
Yeah. Forever. Well, that's the thing. That's the difference between a retainer and a pre-bill. A pre-bill is just an invoice, and you just have their money, and it never expires. You can't.
Okay.
Like, it's not like a retainer where every month you chew into it for $10,000. No.
Yeah.
It's just a gift card. It's a gift card, essentially.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But like, you didn't do a contract. You didn't do a contract with that. They just gave you money, and the understanding is that it's forever. What happens if that whole department leaves, or gets fizzles out? Like, what happens?
It's happened across many companies. Actually, there isn't just one. This is like a game. I'm not going to name any names, but this is a game that everybody plays. The big companies play because they don't want to lose their marketing budget for next year, so they get it off their books this year, and essentially it's a gift card. And going back in time, what I would do now, and by the way, the other bad thing
we just did that recently.
So if any client wants to pre-bill, do not accept it. I'll tell you another bad side effect of accepting pre-bill.
Luckily it's a small amount, so it's not like a lot.
So I'll give you so many bad things about accepting pre-bill. The biggest one, at least I know you're in Canada, but in the United States, they tax you on profits. So if you accept $50,000 of pre-bill and then don't do any work and you just took $50,000, you're going to get taxed on $50,000 profit. That's what the government sees as profit. Profit, at least in the United States, is taxed at 50%. So they gave you they bought a $50,000 gift card, of which you have $25,000 left to do the work. Meaning, like, you're now like, you forget about taking any money for your agency. You're just basically doing this job for free. The other side effect is this.
Oh my God.
Don't do it. I'm just telling you, the pre-bill, it's because you're like, there's so many times when you run a video production company, you're like starving. You go through seasons, and if some client comes around going, "Hey, pre-bill," you're like, "Yes."
What if in your contract,
isn't
our contract that put in a clause that says, if it's been this many months and nothing's happened, then this thing's forfeit, and we keep everything. Oh, okay, then we're good, Carol.
Yeah,
And that's brilliant.
yeah, because then we're good. Okay, yeah. So that's the thing. It's like when you said they pre-build you, because I thought doing a pre-bill, you should still have a contract in place in terms of like what that money is going to be allocated, so that there's an understanding. It's like, this is what it's going to be used for certain work that's going to be done for the next few months or the next like year or so. Like if it's, I think in your case, what you're, just to clarify for the audience, is that getting pre-bill without any set projects,
So you
deadlines,
didn't have
goals,
a contract. It was just
and
like
then
you sent them an invoice, they paid it
it
like
just
that.
opens you up to so much liability.
Oh, okay.
That's it. And we had a statement of work with like a kind of essentially like a understanding that we'd figure this out later. And that's the other bad side effect of pre-bill, is that the team who pre-bills you, they say, yeah, we want to make this cool thing about like spaceships, right? And you're like, yeah, I'll do that. By the time they use it a year later, they're like, oh, no, remember that spaceship thing and that cool thing? No, we just need explainer animations, and we want like 50 of them. Or a lot of times they'll go, can we use your pre-bill? This is another bad side effect of pre-bill.
What?
Can we use your pre-bill for you to pay a different vendor? Like, we don't need a video. We want to buy signs. We want to buy signs for an event. So you know how we gave you $50,000? What we want
you are a bank,
50
yeah.
is just pay this other vendor for us. Not only has it happened, it has happened to other agencies I know. It's not just me.
That is such like that is so illegal when you think about it for that business.
It's not actually. It's like it's just
It's not?
We're the dope.
That sounds, yeah,
They
that's
know that
bizarre. I
video
never knew
production
all this
people
stuff.
are like,
That's
huh,
wild.
yeah, you know.
Jesus,
Or at
they
least
must.
I am. Just don't do it. It's a bad practice, because the other thing is it's almost like because like, and then it's like this. It's like a slippery slope of, because they gave you money last year, now they're going to give you money the next year because they didn't spend enough from last year because they gave it to you, and it like they just need to keep giving you more and more.
It's a never-ending cycle of you holding money as a bank. Isn't there like some kind of regulatory laws about holding money?
One guest
like,
brought up the fact
like
that they don't
banks?
do retainers because they don't want to take on like the depreciation cost of the money itself, right? Because it loses 2%, should lose 2%, right? So right off the bat, if they're giving you 100K, you're losing 2% of that every year. And if it takes them 3 years to do it, like it cuts into your profits at the end of the day, right? But
It's $2,000.
Oh, I haven't made $1 off of any of that pre-bill. Zero. That all of it was a complete curse and a distraction, and you know. And again, I only have myself to blame because I didn't know what I was doing. But that's still no excuse. So I mean,
But you learned,
I would
and-
just avoid. I've learned.
You've
I'm
learned,
telling
and
you
you're
now, please
warning.
don't do
You're
it.
warning other people. Like this.
There you
That's
go.
like that's the whole point of why we're having this discussion. It's like we're taking our experiences, explaining like this was a big mistake. Don't do it, because like Dario and I, we were thinking about, you know, like we technically want pre-booked work or pre-billed work technically, but although we were thinking like, you know, obviously probably a contract needs to be in place at the very
I didn't know
least,
it
but
would
it's
go
like,
in like in
we didn't know
perpetuity
that was
until
also
it was
an
fulfilled.
accepted practice with
I
some
didn't know
companies
about.
or
But
clients.
the difference of what we did was that, like, number one,
that's
we're
wild.
gonna keep doing this going forward. Like, everything was defined going into it. Like, we knew what the project was, and I put all the details in the contract. And our contract also has like a clause saying like, you know. But that is mostly if they stop communicating with us and we don't know what's going on. If it's been a set number of months, then cut the cord type of situation. But wow, okay, this I'm putting this as one of our commandments. Never accept pre-build.
Yeah, don't
nope.
do it.
But even
No
with the
free bill
contract,
with-
Carol, like, what if that thing
without a
takes
set
forever to
contract in
do? Like,
place
what
with
if
an
it's like
understanding
out
of
of the
what that money is gonna
100K,
go
they've
to?
only
Because-
used up 40, and now they're
Yeah.
still 60, and sure, they're still keeping in touch with us, so you can't use the, huh?
but you had the timeline. You had the timeline. It's like, I think the only way where pre-bill will work is like, okay, we can accept this pre-bill
right?
as long as there's a clause where it needs to be used by this date next year in terms of work. Otherwise, if nothing is used by that point, it's been forfeited, because at that point is they're getting the advantage of pre-billing, but also there's a stipulation. It's like, you're not doing it without some kind of consequence where it's like, you've committed to $100,000. We're gonna work on it. We got to use it up, and it's gonna be based on our pricing and how we bill based on these things. So you're gonna come to us with a project. We'll tell you how much of it gets used up, right? Because it's like, we had one guest before from the U.S. also who, it was kind of like a retainer where they basically got a pool of money of $100,000 for the year, and then they just kind of depleted it over the course of the year. That's how they did it.
Retainer.
And that's the only form of pre-billing, which I think legally and safely works for everyone.
That's
but
a retainer.
It's kind of but that's kind of like a retainer, right? But it's like, when you break it down, that's like really the only way that makes the most sense for it. Like, if you're just blindly taking pre-billing, it's like, yeah, sure, here's an invoice, thank you. How is, like, also, like, in what world is like that understanding where it's like that can be used for the next 10 years? It's like, but I don't know. It's such a mess.
Oh, there's so many tricks. There's so many tricks that companies use. And like I said, I'm not the only one. And the other thing about pre-bill, even if you have a contract in place, a lot of times what they'll do, because I started doing that. I said, you have to use this or else, I didn't say I'd take it all, but like, we're going to charge you a fee or whatever. But a lot of times they learn to bait and switch. So they come presenting something, and then at the 11th hour change that thing around, and they still haven't broke the covenants. So it's just like, how I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan. Dave Ramsey says, under no circumstances, everyone always tries to call his show, but like, can I get a car on debt if this circumstance? And Dave Ramsey's like, just no. There is never a good circumstance for buying anything on, debt except a house. And that's how I see pre-bill, is like, I just would never, ever, ever touch it, ever, ever, under no circumstance. It's a siren song. It's I'm telling you, it's getting you to go overboard, and it's just awful. And then the other thing is, now you're turning into something where you got ledgers, and you gotta like, oh, okay, like, you had this, now we're deducting this, and then they get mad when you deduct something because that now they have to like go. Their boss is going to yell at them. I'm telling you, it turns it into a thing that,
oh my God.
And you're like, I got into this to be creative and make videos, and now I'm in Excel, like, looking at interest and stuff. Like, come on. No, just no.
I didn't even think of it from that. I didn't even think of it from that aspect where, like, even like, say you had that pool of money that is dedicated to work, and then they'll ask you to do something, so then you take those billable hours from the pool. It's like, wait, shouldn't that be just something quick or included? Why are you taking it from the pool? It's like,
about that
oh my God, I didn't even think of that
helping,
conversation that might happen.
One of our clients find some graphic design agencies, because I've been meaning to do that for the business anyway, so I was just like, yeah, sure, I'll help you out with that. And one of the agencies was pitching, because I was in their sales meetings after I connected them, and one of the agencies was pitching retainer, right, for their design work. And I was talking to the client afterwards, and she doesn't like retainers. I was like, oh, how come? Because I thought it would fit like what you need and everything. She's like, no, because they did it with a PR agency already, and they didn't like how on their end they had to keep track of all the hours, and then they would ask them like a quick question, and then they would get charged for it. So she brought that up. She didn't like getting charged for it. Yeah, because she's like, it should have been like something simple. I can't believe like they charge us for it.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely. It turns you into like an hour counter, which is like, what? I don't get into this for that. And yeah, exactly. There's so many side effects, so many consequences.
But I can see, but you can see why it goes into that stage.
Like
it makes sense.
Who are you,
right?
a lawyer? Like,
yes.
Yeah. It makes sense. It makes sense because that's the kind of business relationship that turns two parties in, right? Where it's like how else are you going to track the work, right? Because it really is, it's like a unit of measurement, right? Once the money has been paid, what's the next measurement? Hours, essentially, right? It's like a different form of currency.
Well, I'll tell you what, what I used to see when a client would give me money, I used to see that as, yes, we won. This is sweet money. I used to see that as now, like I used to see it as like a huge win, like a total asset. Now when a client engages us and that money comes over, it's a liability actually, because it's a promise. It's like, I have to do this work to a certain standard. All the pressure is on me. As soon as that money hits your bank account, you have to treat it as a liability until the job is complete. Once the job is complete and the client's happy, boom, asset. You won. Only when it's complete. We used to have a bell at Guy Bauer.
That's so old school.
When a sale was made, we'd ring the bell. Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, sale. That was the win.
Boom, shark.
And then post David C. Baker, the bell was only rung when a project was delivered, because that's when you actually make your money. You don't make any money until the project is delivered, client accepts and says, great job. And that was a huge lesson I learned. And that's why pre-bill is terrible, because how many months or years is it until you get to ring that bell? And every month, every day is a liability. It's just sitting there. It's promises that you don't even know.
We're very
when
similar
they're
to you in that
gonna
sense,
materialize
because
or
when we
under what
first started out, it was,
life, so.
yeah, they said they wanted to go through with us. Great, we got the project. And then it got to the point where it was like, let's get the contract signed. And then that means we got the project. And then it got to the point where it's like, contract has to be signed and deposit has to be sent before we say we got the project.
But to his point,
yeah.
It's not like he was treating that deposit and the contract signing as the bell ringing, right? But he's saying it's that not until it's done. And that's kind of how I always think about it too. It's like until the final video is delivered, then I go to Dario, I'm like, all right, project is done. How much are we making?
The margins are always good though, because we go into
thinking,
it knowing
okay,
exactly
now is the
what
win.
we'll
And
make,
usually
right?
the second deposit.
I'm always like, great, we got it, money's in.
Yeah.
Now, Carol, here you go. Let's go back to the sales.
We know. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, but at this point, Guy, is it just you now, or how big is your current team?
Current full-time team is me and my wife. We work out of our basement. Her office is 30 feet that way.
Oh, okay.
Maybe not 30, 20 feet that way. And and then what we do is we bring in freelancers, experts on their own, and fit who we're. I almost like see it as, I'm a big NFL fan. Is every project I will draft or through free agency
It's a cool way of saying
acquire
it.
the exact
I'm stealing that
skilled
one.
players.
I like that. I like that approach.
You have to draft the team. And the other thing is, what I used to do was always default to the same things. I treated every job as the same. So like every job needs, a gaffer, DP, this, that, all, like it would just be like a template. And now the way I see it is you have to use your creativity in how you actually crew out and how you execute as well. Like creativity should be used in the budgeting and for like just the day planning and all that stuff, because you can unlock a ton of value and actually increase your production value by, like changing up your mixture, your recipe for that, unique job.
Oh, I know what you mean. So it's like, for example, if like normally a lot of projects need director, producer, DP, gaffer, PA, audio op, right? Based on the project that you're selling, you might realize, okay, we're pitching with that kind of budget in mind, but it's like, oh, we don't necessarily need an audio op for this project because
or even a stronger
voiceover.
editor, maybe.
Let's allocate that budget to a secondary camera operator with another camera, or a stronger editor or editing team. Then you're basically reallocating resources based on that budget. I mean, but then there's sometimes the aspect though where like a client's budget is only a certain amount, so you have to kind of make cuts where you need, so that budget doesn't really get allocated in other places. But I know I understand what you mean. Essentially, it's like getting creative with the budgets, where it's like you might take out a little bit from production, add it to post, or take out a little bit.
You
from,
can add like a stronger copywriter
post
or
to
something.
add to production
There's
to make
ways
it a lot easier for post. You know, yeah, there's
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and to me, it's all about, like they say Warren Buffett, well, they don't say, he says, Warren Buffett says his greatest skill, the gift that he was blessed with at birth, is capital allocation. So he just knows if you give him $100, how to exactly split up that $100 into different investments to yield the most value. And I think that's what we all have to do, is you have to look at this budget as your Warren Buffett kind of investment sheet. Like, exactly how much are we going to allocate and where to maximize the production value on the screen. A lot of times people see our work and they're like, oh man, what did that cost? Like 200 grand? I'm like, no, it's like 28,000. And I think that's through the just thinking differently. A lot of times, I would say 9 out of 10 projects that you see on our site, I'm booming. Because I was like, I'll just boom. Like, we'll just put that money somewhere else. I need a a colorist or somewhere else that is actually going to go on the screen. So I don't mind booming. And like on the Matomo Guggenheimer thing, I'm in the desert, like tripping over all my wires, booming. It's a huge joke on my sets how awful I am as a boom op, because I'm just in a tangled mess of wires trying to direct and boom op at the same time. But to me, I'm like, I'd rather just, like, I know it's inconvenient. It hurts my
luckily
back,
now you're also
but,
at a I think you're at a more more flexible
we'll put the money
position
somewhere else,
because your overhead costs, I'm sure, have decreased tremendously, where you can also just be like the audio op for your shoot or whatnot, versus in the past. I'm sure you wouldn't have been able to do that, because if you had to keep feeding the beast, you had to stay in the office, do sales, figure out your accounting, do all that jazz. So
yeah, and that's a huge lesson I learned is, I'm a video maker. I will say, I don't think it sounds bragging, but I think I'm a darn good video maker. I've been making them for 30 years. I'm pretty good at it. And when you build a business, and especially the second you hire someone, you are now moving from video maker to business operator. And those are two completely different skill sets. They couldn't be further apart. And I assumed just because I was really good at videos and everyone wanted to give me money that building this company won't be a hard thing. And yeah, I couldn't be more wrong. So yeah, the fact that we don't have the overhead allows me to say no more. And I think that's, we talked about moving from generalist to specialist. I think, and I think that's what Warren Buffett says too, is in his early years, he said yes to everything. Now he says no to most. And that's how I do it too. Like most projects, our win rate on the number of leads that come in versus projects that we do is probably like 3%. It's just like a batter looking at pitches. You gotta like watch them. You can't swing at all of them. You should only take the winners. Even if someone wants to give us a lot of money, but I can tell that we're not going to be able to beat us, again, that's a big red flag and a liability, because now we have to do this work that we're not really good at for a client who really doesn't value us. What are the chances that that ends well? Yes, we'll have money, but how many sleepless nights? Those emails that come in from clients at 8:30, like, hey, we need to talk tomorrow morning. And you're like, oh, God. And then you're not sleeping. And then you start treating all the other clients like that bad client. And so that's a huge thing, is you have to say no to the bad clients, because they will like infect, at least how I work, is they will infect you. And then you'll start treating all the clients like that, like the evil one.
You really nailed it on the head there, honestly. Like
I
so
just like, I
many
like how he called him the
examples
evil
started
one.
to come to my
Like,
mind,
just
and
it
Dario's
made me
smiling
laugh.
because I already know probably one or two that have already the evil one. Yeah, because I remember last year there was one client project where it was like one where we didn't even make that much money on it in total. The profit margin was super low, but then Dario would keep getting emails and calls from the client at the most random times to get certain things done. They were trying to get us to start doing animation work before a script was even ready for a voiceover artist and things like that. And it really just goes to show like the amount of energy and time and effort gets wasted on that one bad client. And then when you have your good client calling, yeah,
they weren't bad
good
people,
work for them,
just
but it's like
getting
you're already in
but
a
then
bad kind of mindset.
I did my
when
classic
you're
thing of
talking to
like
them, and
you
then
set boundaries where it's like it's
that's what I mean. Yeah, like it's
inconsistently consistent. So like I wouldn't like be available right away. Sometimes I'd be available right away for emails and whatever, and then sometimes I'd wait a day or two. You never know my schedule. I'll get back to you, just don't know when. As soon as I establish that they kind of like understood. So, and the other thing is never give out your personal number. Never give out or never answer anything from your personal number. That's the trick.
I love that.
Yeah. Keep everything on, especially with those types of clients.
It's not
you have
even
to keep
that. Like you don't
everything
want to
on an
like
email
constantly
trail,
be called or
because
whatever.
whatever gets
right?
said on a
Like,
phone
or
call is not
text
necessarily
messages.
recorded
That's
all
like
the
a
time,
bad
right?
trap.
So,
I noticed is like sometimes you start like a text convo with a client,
yeah.
and then like it's like text messages. Like you just get text messages all the time because it's a lot easier to send a text than to send an email, right? So you got to try to keep that strictly email, or like look at my Calendly and book something there.
Yeah.
Type of situation.
Man, you know how many years that took me to learn what you have done? Yeah, that's exactly right. I learned back in the day, I read a book, and they said, yeah, email is not a priority. You need to subconsciously teach them that if you email, it could take 48 hours, that if something's truly an emergency, call the business line or do whatever, but like you don't use email as a channel for urgent things, but I guess that's harder and harder every day because who's got phone numbers anymore?
Well, also, how do you constitute what is an emergency? For one client, they will think everything is an emergency because everything needs to be done at some point. So that's why you have to keep it in an email format, because then that also forces them to manage things on their end. Because sometimes what happens with some clients is that they leave things to the last second, and then they try to get you to compensate for that, where it's like they had a week to prep something where they needed to get a video done by the Monday, right? And then they, instead of telling you on the Monday, they tell you on the Friday, try to call you frantically. It's like, oh, we need a video done by Friday, or we need to make these changes done by Friday. Can you get it done right now? It's like, why didn't you tell us on Monday so we can plan it out and then coordinate, right? So you have to you're kind of like teaching them in a way, right? It's like, you have to do some work on your end so that we can help you get your work done in a timely fashion, right? Like, obviously you always try to help them as much as you can, right? But also if you start to enable that by constantly doing that for them, then they're going to think that is the norm. They could always leave things to the last second. You're always going to do it. And I see this happen with a lot of freelancers that we've worked with in the past who work with certain agencies, and they became great problem solvers for those agencies and clients, but doing it very quickly and very much at the last second at his expense. And he suffered as a result in the future. And, like you have to basically teach clients, it's like, look, I'm not your errand boy that's going to be at the phone waiting every 5 seconds to do your bidding. Like, if I'm doing that for you, how am I going to do that for my other clients, right? It's also teaching them, it's like, I'm treating you with good respect as I treat all my other clients. We want to make sure we take care of everybody, right? Because if I'm doing that for you, what's to tell you? It's like, if I don't answer your call next time, I'm doing that for someone else, and then I can't give you the necessary attention. So it's really a balancing act when it comes to that.
I love that. Love it.
One thing I was gonna also just
What's
before
that like?
we finish, because you mentioned it's just you and your wife now as like the core team. Like, were you guys yeah, were you doing that before with Guy Bauer Productions, or was this something you decided with the new venture, like to go into business with your wife?
She's been working with me since like 2015 or 2015.
Oh, okay, so it's been a while.
So she worked in the old company, and then and essentially there's two branches of our company. There's operations, and then there's creative, and she does operations, I do creative. There's a very solid firewall there, where, because I would say I'm like awful to work with, actually. So
people that say that are always
don't be so hard on yourself like that. Come on.
I'm for as many like cool.
They're the greatest people to work with.
I don't know. Anyway, so I think it's the other thing that because she's my wife, like if I start acting crazy, she's like, dude, be quiet. Like she can tell me to like shut up and kind of go to your room. And so she has the ability to tune me out, and that's, I think that's critical, because I'm from New Jersey. I think out loud a lot of times, and sometimes, and that's what would also freak out employees. Like if a client wasn't happy, or we got yelled
you can't
at or
say
something,
that.
go,
Yeah.
well, I could always drive an Uber, and as a leader, like that's the worst thing to say. What are you doing, you idiot? Like, but that was my internal thought. Is like, well, like I could drive an Uber, like, and that is still my backup plan. Or
really,
I think my backup plan actually is changing to, I want to like open a
Umault
pie
pizza
shop. But anyway, I always have a backup plan in case in case people realize I stink or something. But yeah, and
she's like your consigliere.
She knows like when I start talking like that, just like shut up, like, dude, consigliere. Yeah, exactly. I love it, actually, and she's actually a really great. She used to be a paralegal.
That's probably
so
the
she's,
best
like,
person to have
detail-oriented.
running
She
operations.
used to redact like 1,000 pages of documents. So
Yeah. Yep.
She finds everything. We just did a carnet for a job we have in a couple weeks, and she found like one line. I would just go like, sure, approved. She found like one thing they didn't include, and so yeah, that's not my type of thinking.
That's
so
good.
We don't really step on each other's toes, which is also good.
Hey,
that's
Carol,
great.
go ahead.
I mean,
How do you guys
yeah,
separate it?
It's very straight. It's pretty straightforward. Dario handles more of like the sales and outreach, and a little kind of like the operation side of it, and I handle more the creative aspect and the actual head of production, and that's kind of how we've split it. Obviously, there's always a little bit of overlap.
I basically handle up until
aspects,
like the production is
in terms
done.
of
Then
responsibilities,
like Kirill obviously
that is
does.
I mean, like
most of the creative on that front. So basically, how it works is I'll do sales, client communications, some managerial stuff as well. And then once it gets into creative, like that's a lot of Kirill. I'm basically like the client's eyes during that whole process. Like what would they approve? What would they not like? All that stuff. And then during production, I'll take on producing, and then we co-direct. Unless he's on a separate project, he'll do that. He'll just produce and direct. And then once it goes into post, it's just totally Kirill. I'm basically like the step before the client. So like I'll see the video, go like, no, they won't like this, won't like that, change this, and then it goes to client. But yeah.
Yeah, it's the one funny thing about that. It's a good system that we have in work, and it's helped us out in many instances where when you're basically working on one thing, you get really kind of focused on the creative, and you get attached to kind of like how the deliverables are going to be, because it flows in a certain way. And then Dario will come in and be like, oh, here's like a shot that might have been missing, or like, oh, you need to adjust this thing. It becomes like one of those like frustrated relationships at times.
My skill,
like,
I know,
Dario, stop it, like, but it's not Dario, right? It's really for the client.
Like, when I see one of our videos, like in the rough cut, I'm like, they're not gonna like this, they're not gonna like that. We got to change this, and then every time we don't listen to me, like they come back with those changes. So after a while, we're like, listen, let's do it the way I think they'll like it, because then they'll like it. But Kyril's also good in the proposals, because when I draft those up, I have him take a look at it, because sometimes I might forget what we might need in terms of like production support or anything like that. So he will come in and say, no, like we need to boost up the pre cost because it'll take more work or this or that. So then him and I have to like fight on the price, because I'm like, I think we'll close it if it's closer to this amount. But Kyril's like, no, it's going to cost us this amount to complete it.
That's the thing that's always it's like we're having battles with each other, but it's like it's really us trying to battle with the client, right? And then it's one of those aspects where they're saying, no, they're gonna close at this price. I'm like, all right, but we can't be pitching $500 for pre-production for this project, you know?
Yeah.
You know, like that's just like an example, right? It's just one of those things where you're always trying to kind of like figure out a good balance. But that's like how it is with any business when you're working with client projects. You're trying to figure out what is the best approach that is doable for that client. You know, it's not like you can.
That's
just
a low
take
blow,
$100,000 and call it a day,
That's a
right?
low blow.
Yeah.
I had to throw one in there just for the fun of it. But anyways, you know.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. What were you gonna say?
No, I was going to ask, like, how do you guys, do you have any, like, shortcut of budgeting, like how you budget
I
your
think like the
projects?
way we
you
do it
take
is very
hard
basic.
costs and
I think we're
multiply
doing
by
it the right way,
something, or-
but like we already established like what our costs are. So we have like different packages essentially, and we just modify
changing.
those. So like, yeah, like, yeah.
It's like a baseline. It's a baseline based on what a client's budget is. Like when they present like what they're looking for and what their budget is, we have certain, because a lot of the time we're getting clients that don't do video too often.
No, but he's saying on our end.
So we're
on
trying
our
to
end,
kind of
we
get
have,
them an
like,
understanding
a
of
way
like
to do
what
it.
the
And
whole
it's
process
just
is.
like we have like
each part of that
determined
process.
prices set already, and like there's some
Yeah.
variance in there. So like for example with pre-production we have some flexibility in lowering it if you know there's not going to be too much pre-involved, and then that can kind of help us close the project, or increasing it if we know we need to do more pre, but it's usually around that range, right? So we have about, I mean, we've been doing this since 2014, so we kind of have like a rough range of like it's usually within this price point. And then like the easiest stuff to figure out is just like for like our production team, like we already know what like all the freelancers, what their costs are, so we just like, you know, duke a little bit on top of that.
That's the easiest
the
part.
tricky one for us is always for editors. Like we know like the rough range, but that's also where we make a good chunk of our profits. So yeah, but our margins are pretty high. Like we have every project we do, I think our margins are like 30-40% goes to the business. Like the rest is just like hard costs.
Keeping
Doing
only
the
thing
shoots.
to stipulate though is that these margins are also based on us doing that work and those other aspects, right? So like one thing that I think a lot of people that might make a mistake sometimes, especially when they're pitching for post, is that what an editor charges for a project, they'll charge that and maybe just a little bit, like just a small amount on top. But what people don't take into account is a lot of the time what you're also doing on the back end with the editor, working with the editor, your time that's involved. That's a big aspect of it, right? So it's like, okay, if we're just going to charge what the editor is going to charge, so basically I'm just going to give it to them, he's going to figure it out, and then I just deliver it. That's what that makes sense. But then what happens in the situations when you're working on a very creative project that you developed in pre-production, you have to work with the editor to get it exactly right, exact timing sometimes even, and then you have to also communicate that with the client, go over those notes, and then work out kind of like, all right, you don't want to do it like this, maybe we can kind of do it like that. There's just so much more time that goes into each stage of the process, and then the more projects you do, the more you will learn how much time is generally spent. So that's why Dario was saying there's a rough range that we might get an idea of, but it's always good to confirm with your freelance editors how
that
much
answer
it's
your
going to be
question,
on their
or-
end,
I
and then
don't
you
know if
figure
we
out how
answered
much
it
time you're
properly or
going to
not.
spend on it, and then that's how you bill. But is that kind of like
that's exactly right. Yeah.
And how do you go about it, like with your projects?
So I just copied. I don't know if you ever heard of this podcast called RevThink. They have a thing called The Split. And essentially, you take the big budget and you divide it in half, and that's how much you can spend on freelancers. So if you sell a $20,000 project, you can spend $10,000 on freelancers. The other 10 has to go to all your, like, to maintain the agency, and that's for all of your hours, and then your profit comes out of that 50%. So essentially, that's kind of how
I think we've been basically doing that without knowing, because I think like I said 30-40, but I think it was actually a little bit higher. So we've been
something like that.
Like it just naturally became like that. So half of our costs would be the freelancers, and then the other half would just go to the business, right? And we tend to do yeah. So we're doing something right, Carol.
Yeah,
paying us as an expense, paying the business, and that's
need to be paid.
Yeah. It's a natural progression, because it's like if you basically pitch a project based on just what the freelancers are going to charge, which a lot of production companies do, but that's like at that point, like you're basically managing without being paid for it as well, right? like you're doing the work for the client without getting paid for it at the same time. But again, you have to start somewhere. It always depends on your situation, but I like how you put it. It's a good rule. It's like if the budget's 20, half of it goes to freelancers, because then you also have a system that you know in terms of like when you make that
what was
sale,
that podcast called? RevThink?
Potential margins are as a business.
I'm gonna check it out after this.
RevThink. Yeah.
I have it open here.
Yeah, I think it's called The Split. If you just search their podcast archive, but it was it was just that one episode I listened to. I was like, oh man, that's actually brilliant and very easy. And the way we do it is we always write to our production budget. So if we, for example, if we have a $30,000 job, when I'm writing the script, I'm writing this to be made for $15,000 hard costs in freelancers and everything. So it's like I kind of like, ever since we did that, it's been just a lot easier because we're not stretching ourselves. The worst is when, you've pitched this job, pitched this idea where you're like,
that client Carol was talking about that. Like, I think we broke even on that project.
Yep.
Everyone's done that.
They got in touch with me recently. I've been like, slow
the amount of time we spent on that, we
they want to do another
lost
video.
just
I'm like,
in time alone, right?
Yeah.
Just double the quote and then see what they say. But I like that. That kind of rule mindset, because like even though Dario was saying we've unconsciously had that kind of approach for us, thinking like that, especially in the creative, is a good way to kind of keep things within a certain budget, especially. And I like that. I like that approach. It's something I'm going to start kind of keeping in the back of my mind as we're getting through that. But the problem is, like, sometimes when you're pitching with leads, you're trying
That's
to
why you do the
so
starting. You do the you do starting at, and you put it really small font.
But then
so
when you get to the actual,
like, it was there.
Yeah.
But it's always like a jumping off point, right? Like that's what I let my leads know as well. It's like this is what it starts at. But again, like if we get like it might go up. Depends on what you guys want to do, right? So many good tips this episode. I feel like we got to do like a top 10 with you. Go through each one.
Yeah, this.
I don't even know how to title this episode.
This we touched on a lot of
what do you call those? The T-bill,
pre-billing. So it's always nice. Don't accept pre-billing. That's the title. Don't accept pre-billing. That's the title.
Oh, one thing I forgot when we were talking about bad clients. There was a story. I'll never forget this moment. Just how bad a bad client is. I did this project with a bad client, and we wrapped. Walking to my car, I was like, I'm not cut out for this. I'm not cut out for video. Meaning, it's not like I'm not cut out. It's like I stink at video. The client had me convinced that I was terrible and I should just leave, that I'm just the worst director ever. And that's what a bad client can do. And they paid everything, but I'll never forget that feeling walking back to the car. I was like, yeah, no.
Jesus.
I was completely convinced I was like just garbage as a video maker. So it is awful. And and that's why, like, in that first call, there's so many times where I have these gut instincts. I once had a call with a client who was like eating while they were talking to me on the first call, and I just like, that's kind of a sign of like, well, you're the help. Like you're like you're not.
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat my lunch while I talk to you, and I was like, and I didn't listen to my gut, and it turned out to not be good. And so like that first call, you have to like listen to your gut, because I'm telling you, it always comes true. Like exactly what I think is going to happen on that first call usually ends up happening. And it's so weird because you're in a business and they're going to give you money, and that's cool. And like your spreadsheet doesn't show any emotion. So your spreadsheet doesn't know like, this actually brought in a lot of profit, but at night you couldn't sleep and you thought your whole destiny is meant for doom. Like you don't get to note that in a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And that's and what they can do is what I've noticed
like
myself is that when
but we're not ending on a negative note. So you got to tell me something positive before.
And it's a virus, man.
I was
Sorry.
Here's before we get to that. As you were mentioning that, I was looking around my desk to see if I had a granola bar somewhere that I could just slowly open right now. I'm like, damn it! I'm like feeling in this backpack here. I'm like, do I have one?
You should have done it.
Can I pull off this timing just like perfectly? I'm like, damn it! It's in the kitchen. I can't get the granola bar. That's what I mean. I was trying to do that.
We gotta film this after,
let me
Carol,
see
and
if I
then
had
we'll
the
cut
chance,
it
'cause
into the
I was
episode,
looking.
and then we'll
I'm
make
like,
your
no,
audio
there's
even
nothing
louder than
handy.
it is. Oh my god!
This is like,
All right, say something. Say something positive though, because like I want to end on a high note.
Cut. Let me
Tell me about like your most positive, like fun, memorable experience.
Something positive.
I think something positive. Yeah, actually.
One time this client didn't get a granola bar while we had our sales call, so that was a really good.
We put him on the spot. That's why,
No, actually, like I would say this is that if you look at Umault's clients, there are great clients out there. There are very many great clients.
Yeah.
And it's like, did you ever see Fantasia?
The OG.
Yeah. There's this anime, the old one, I think. It's all these centaurs. Yeah. All these centaurs are like meeting their mates. And there's this one centaur, I forget, I don't know, maybe they were weird looking. I forget what their whole thing was. But they were sad because there was no mate for them. But then eventually they found their mate. And they were like mirror images of each other. And this took me a long time to learn, is that I am good enough. Like, what I can do in the very limited capacity I have, I can't do everything well. I can do, like, this little sliver really well. Like, and sometimes I think world class. Like, this little sliver is my lane. And guess what? There are clients out there that want that little sliver of what you can do best. And have confidence in yourself that you can do this. You know, you can't do everything, but you can do this. And there are clients out there that want you, that think you're good. Like, you don't have to be something you're not. And you don't have to, like, feel bad that, like, you can't do stuff that they do on Smuggler's Site or Pretty Bird, right? Like, that what you do is wanted and very valuable. And it took me 14 years to be able to be comfortable saying that. And so don't get discouraged when you are with bad clients or when you're just starting out and you're in event videos and they forget to feed you, which has happened where they're like, oh,
really?
I once had a job where a client was like mad that we had to go to the bathroom or mad that I let the crew eat. They're like, oh, well, this is going to cut into it. Like they were upset that we were like had human needs. When you're in those depths, just know that eventually the good ones will find you. And I have a client right now that like I just can't believe I have because they are amazing. And we see eye to eye and we have creative discussions.
Per my last email.
Per my last email. It's just very respectful all around.
Per my last email. I love how you added that voice onto it.
There are centaurs out there for you. And you will meet your match, and there's a client out there that wants you for you. That's my positive note.
Super inspirational. Let's end it
don't
right
take
there.
pre-bills. Okay, so guys, if you want to find
Love it.
Don't take
Guy
pre-bills.
Bauer, you can go to Umault. Oh, okay, now I'm screwing up the name. Okay, it's Umault, but it's spelled Umault, so UMAULT.com. I actually found your site back in 2021 when we were redoing our website. I was trying to get inspiration, and like you were ranking like crazy high. And I remember checking out your site, going like, "Oh shit, this is really good." And I sent the video you had in the about section to Kirill way back then. I don't know if you remember, Kirill. I was like, "Yeah, check out the video that these guys did." It's the same one. Because I went to the about site. It's the lady.
Was it
in
the
the
same
meeting.
one?
I remember sending it to Kirill. I'm like,
Was
"Yeah,
it the
check out
same
what
one?
this guy's doing." So I'm glad to finally, I'm glad to finally be able to chat with you.
I
all these
vaguely
years
remember
later.
it now.
But okay,
Yeah, super good.
UMAULT.com, and then your social is what?
Just UMAULT, just all over Umault.
At
we're
Umault.
primarily
Nice. And you guys are based in Chicago,
our major
correct?
channel that we spend the most time on.
Is that close to Chicago? Or
Actually in Oak Brook Terrace, Illinois, a suburb.
is it? Okay.
But Chicago, yeah.
That's like the Barrie of Toronto, okay?
Okay, that's fine. I live in the
It's just a
boring
bunch
part
of
of Toronto
business
now,
parks
so I
and
understand.
stuff. Yeah, it's like the boring part.
Okay.
Yeah. But Guy, thank you so much, man. Like honestly, this was such a great conversation.
I still think we
and-
should do like a
and
top
super
10
chill.
like tips
Love-
video.
I feel like we could chat for
I think
hours.
he's got enough. Like I
on
could
this
see it
stuff.
in
I
his
feel like
face.
there
I'm
are
like,
more
this guy's got a
topics to
lot
be-
more to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I got some stories for you guys.
No, honestly, this has been one of the best conversations I've ever been a part of because it was a conversation, and I appreciate it. And you guys are doing it all right. I mean, I think, you've learned so
Thank
many
you.
lessons that took me way longer to learn, so I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creatives Grab Coffee. Please make sure to follow and engage with us on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and your favorite podcast app.
Creatives Grab Coffee is created by Labs Productions, a video production company based in Toronto, Canada.
Creatives Grab Coffee is also sponsored by...
My name is Miran. Welcome to Canada Film Equipment. We are a boutique rental house based in Toronto. We are here to help you guys out with all production sizes. Feel free to contact us to get a quote if you are a production house and you're looking for lighting, camera packages, or lighting and group fan packages. You can see our contact information in the link below. We are more than happy to help you guys out. Make sure you follow and subscribe to creativesgrabcoffee.com. Thank you.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Matt. Welcome to Audio Process. We are a boutique audio company doing location sound, sound design, post-sound, ADR, Foley. We service equipment. We do all your audio needs here in Toronto. We got you covered. Come on down, audioprocess.ca. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and all of the other internet things to creativesgrabcoffee.com. They'll be waiting for you. I'll be waiting for you, and we're all going to have a real good time.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.